Welcome to the Mavs Fans for Life podcast. I'm Landon Thomas, joined by my co-host Shahnavaz Makhani. Shahnavaz, you decked out today.
Red River
Are
rivalry.
you getting excited for tomorrow?
Let's go.
Okay. What is Texas ranked right now? Number one?
Number one, baby. Number one team in the country.
I like how you add all that stuff. What is
Just
that
in
you
case.
this year?
They're 20th right now. They're coming. Their defense is not good.
20th? Oh.
They were top 10 when the season started. I think they've dropped.
Okay.
They've dropped a game. They benched their quarterback. First true freshman to ever start the Red River rivalry tomorrow for Oklahoma. Local kid out of Allen, Michael Hawkins Jr. He was coached by Kyler Murray's dad. Played a couple of years in Allen and then a couple of years at Frisco, and now went to Oklahoma. And Quinn Ewers is back for my Longhorns. So it's a big game.
It's a big game. Okay.
OU tomorrow, Georgia next week. So this is gonna define. This will really show who Texas is.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Texas, I went to the state fair last weekend. Man, that was. I mean, I've been many times, but just when you go, it's always a good time.
Yeah.
You know, all the stuff to eat. It was a cheat day for me, but all
What
the
was your
stuff
favorite?
to eat.
What was your favorite snack or item that you got there? Because every year they've got new stuff, right? They always come up with something cool. So
That is tough. So, I mean, obviously the funnel cake is really good. I had the funnel cake, and then also, what else did we have? Dang, there's I'm sorry, I know it. We had this potato filled with shrimp.
Ooh,
It was so good, so
sounds
good. All the
interesting.
toppings, everything
Like
that
a
you
baked
can
potato?
imagine. Baked potato with shrimp.
dang.
I didn't get cheese, some sauce on it, some little sprinkles of, it was everything that you can imagine in that potato. So good.
Yeah, that
So
sounds
good.
great.
I say 9.5 out of 10.
Wow. All right. Anybody going
Yeah,
to
it
the
was
state fair?
overflowing.
Anybody going to the state fair get your shrimp potato?
Potato. All right, shout out us. All right, let's talk to Mavs. That's why people tune in. So this is the first week of preseason. The season starts in 2 weeks. Oh my gosh, when you're covering a team that goes far in the playoffs, the offseason just flies by.
Yeah.
There's a lot to take in because, I mean, it's preseason. Do you really look at the scores? The Mavs lost both games, one by 5, the other by 5. But I mean, when you watched it, especially when the first game, it was really rough to watch. Then you got Kyrie and Klay back the second game, so that first half only was pretty exciting to see. Obviously, there's some wrinkles that needed to be adjusted throughout the remaining of preseason. It takes time for new players to adjust to each other. But just overall, what was your thoughts, when you take in the first 2 games of the Mavs preseason?
Yeah, I think the first thing is excitement, especially with Klay, in yesterday's game against Utah. Even he said it, kind of putting the jersey on, kind of felt like his rookie season again. I think there was definite excitement, from the fans, from the crowd. I mean, he, obviously we've talked about how it's kind of a revenge year for him, but it's more like a new career renaissance, right? Like this guy's like, it's like the new arc of his career. You spend so much time in Golden State, and now, whoever thought that he would leave the Warriors? It's kind of one of those things where nobody thought it was possible, and here he is. It's a new situation for him, and it just the excitement, from all the Mavs fans, from him, from the team. I think that's one of the biggest things that really jumped out to me. The other is, we talked about this with Dante Exum's injury, is who's going to step up, who's going to be, that guard that's going to come in and kind of showcase and say, you know what, it's okay if Dante's out, like I'll take care of it. And I've loved what I've seen from Jaden Hardy so far. I think that, he's the one guy that we said he's got to come in. This is the opportunity. Do what Josh Green couldn't do last year. Seize your chance and prove it. And I think he's balled out. He's played exceptionally well. He had 21 against the Grizzlies, had 12 against the Jazz last night. He's making a case to be, the second guard off the bench after Spencer Dinwiddie. So, we've always talked about it. You take it, make the most of your chances. And I think Jaden Hardy's doing that exceptionally well in the first 2 games.
Yeah, he really has. He it's about progress and defining an identity in this league, especially as a young player. Just the journey that he's been on with Hardy. He was what, top 3 player, top 5 player in his class, and then you go to the G League Unite, who doesn't even exist anymore. And you really try to find yourself, and it doesn't pan out the way you envision as a young kid. I'm sure he had dreams of going number 1 overall,
Mhm.
or in the top 5.
At
And
least
then
first round.
when you at least
You
first
know,
round,
I
yeah.
thought he was going to fall the second round. It's crazy.
And that's what it really boils down to is, how do you recover from those obstacles? How do you bounce back? And I think he's done it well, not just pre NBA but in the NBA. He's Jason Kidd has made him really patient and make sure that you're ready when your number is called. And each time it's been up and down, but right now in this point in time, it feels like he's ready. And that's what you were just alluding to is, the maturity in his game, the growth in his game. And stats are stats, but when you just watch him play, he's very decisive. And I feel like that, especially players like him, when they show that decision making where you don't think, you just play because
Yeah.
you already know how to read the game. It shows growth in your game where you can say, I'm ready. And I think he's definitely a highlight of the preseason so far. So I agree with you. I think he is taking over his spot in the rotation. Obviously, we don't know how much it'll be when Luka comes back. That will be
Yep.
interesting. To see where him and Spencer Dinwiddie fall into the rotation. Because it seems like Spencer is the plug and play guy. He's either going to be a starter or he's going to be a backup PG. So with Grimes already there, so it's going to be interesting. But one thing you can say is Hardy is doing what he's supposed to do. But going to Klay Thompson, man, I honestly saw him be nervous too. Like not just on the court, but in the pregame huddle. Like before you go out, where they have a pregame huddle where Kyrie leads the team, and he says something to the team before they head out, and you could see the nerves. I mean, Clay's really, really, from what I've seen, is a really low key guy.
Mhm.
So he's not a raw guy. He's not a very vocal guy, but when I saw him in pregame huddle, you could see there were nerves. Like he was
Yeah.
looking around, he was kind of just trying to focus. And when you're nervous, like you said, he even said it like in the post game. He said he was nervous for 4 days straight, and he hasn't been that nervous since 2015 finals game 1. And he compared it to his rookie year, like you mentioned, his first preseason game. And I think that's what excites him. That's what because he even said it. He said that's what was amazing feeling. And I also asked him about being embraced, because that's
Mhm.
another aspect of it. One is playing basketball on the court with a different team, like you talked about, but the other is a different environment. And I asked him, how's it feel, because Kyrie went through the same thing. Even though he wasn't with the same team for that long, but he tried it out with big markets after leaving Cleveland, and he went out of his comfortability, because he was traded here, and he wanted to be with the Nets, but obviously that collapsed. So in the way of embracing himself in the crowd, embracing him, the city embracing him, the teammates, the organization, I asked Klay, I was like, you know, um, with Kyrie, that was one of the biggest things that he said, was he was
Mhm.
embraced by those 3 aspects. How does it feel with you, being with the team, hearing we want Klay, just the aura of all those fans chanting, we want Klay. And then you hear the roar when your name is called in the starting lineup, not coming off the bench, but starting lineup again. You get those juices back. And that's
Yeah.
what I thought was something special to see. And he said, feeling that, with the crowd. and how they embraced him and how they want him, it brings expectations.
Mhm.
And he said, greatness comes with great expectations. And it also made him justify his decision. He said, he didn't say I think. He said, I know I made the right decision just from the environment that I've been in and being around the team the past few weeks.
Yeah, it goes back to, Kyrie and Nico, really the push to get Klay and the relationship that Kyrie and Klay have from Team USA, and then obviously with
Yeah.
Nico and Nike. Kyrie, man, it's unbelievable to see the growth in leadership. Like, everyone knows how skilled of a basketball player he is. We've seen, the handles, arguably the best ball handler in NBA history.
Mhm.
He's extremely well revered within the league, by other players. But people don't really know. Obviously, people remember the bad stuff, from Brooklyn and get, wanting to, asking out of Cleveland. And there's a really great article in The Athletic about Kyrie Irving and kind of his mentality and growth in leadership and how he had to fight through a lot of adversity to kind of understand what it meant to be a leader. It's being
Mm.
being around guys like LeBron and being around having to go through the struggles in Brooklyn, and having all of this in the media about him, with his tweets and the vaccine and all this. He really had to take a step back and kind of understand what does it mean to be a leader now that he's spent this much time in the league. And it's just a phenomenal story of growth for him. And he's the main reason the Mavs have Klay. And now your point you brought up, it's a whole new, it feels like it's a new, a new start for Klay. And it is, but the fact that he's nervous
Mhm.
and he knows this is where I want to be, I know that I'm the missing piece to this team. I mean, it just adds another layer for the Mavericks as they get ready to start the season. It makes you excited if you're a fan. Again, we've talked about all off season how this is the first time in forever. It feels like the Mavericks got, their targets. Like, everyone they went after in free agency, they got, and it's
Yeah.
awesome to see. And a lot of that has to do with the culture they've built within the building, the players they have, and the relationships they built. You can see there's a genuine joy when they play each other, or play with each other.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Even in practice, you see all the interviews, post practice, post game interviews. You can just tell there's a joy of these guys liking to play with each other. Derek Lively, throwing the towel at Luke after he hit that shot, during, well, I think it was during Fan Jam last week. There's just the cult. It's like a workplace, right? I mean, this is
Yep.
a job for them, right? If you work for a place that has bad culture, you're not going to enjoy it. You're not going to want to go to work. You're not going to want to, do well. But if you go to a place that really embraces you, you like the people you work with, you like your teammate. I mean, that just makes you excited every day. And I think that's what the Mavericks have built.
Yeah, you said it best. It is a workplace. It's their job. It's their living, and you want to be embraced. And with Klay, I think it's just being valued. And that's what happened with Kyrie. Just being valued, and not just on the court, but off the court and in the front office, because they had differences with their front offices, and you just want to feel that you still are a true value to the team, and that you still are prioritized as the player that like he said, expectations. You want to have expectations. You don't want to be, okay, you're coming off the bench and we'll just be great in your minutes. No, like you are a part of our team. The Mavericks are promoting him as the third guy. They've been doing that. Even around the arena, there's Luka, Kyrie, and Klay. It's
Mhm.
not PJ. It's not Derek Lively. It's not, guys who you would think that last year were in those positions. Like, the Mavs pulled him in to help them win a championship. They didn't
Yeah.
pull him in just to get a big name to fill the seats. They know what their weakness was, and they know what Clay's strengths are, and hopefully that will get them over the hill, because that is what they ran into with the Celtics. It's going to be an exciting season. I don't want to put expectations on this team, but because it's a long season, you'll know what happens over the course of the year. But I think big things are in store for this team. Obviously, we talked about what we think they should be last week, just on power rankings or betting odds.
Betting
You
odds. Yeah.
know, they they are a top 5 team. They should be the number 3 team in my eyes. But but expectations up on like winning a championship or those type of things, that's tough to do. So you have to have everything fall in your order, but also you have to play right at the best time, which they did last year. But just to repeat it, it's great to have someone with experience who knows how to win, who knows how to bounce back from defeat, and who knows. Jason Kidd said it.
Mhm.
When you have something to prove of his stature, a Hall of Famer, top 3, if not the second best shooter of all time, that's dangerous.
Yeah, and you bring up kind of not, you talk about what the expectations are for this team, and Klay being, overlooked and kind of underappreciated. I think the Mavericks as a whole are overlooked and underappreciated. We talked about betting odds last week. You look at ESPN's survey of the year, other than Luka being, the best point guard in the league by a lot, and in terms of what was voted on by other players. I mean, in terms of who had the best offseason, it's Oklahoma City. Who's going to be the best team in the league? It's Oklahoma City. Like the Mavericks, Shea is getting all this love for MVP, and rightfully so. Oklahoma City's a good team, but it feels like again the Mavericks are being overlooked coming off of a finals appearance. It's kind of baffling to me that this team is people just aren't giving them credit, and I think the Mavericks themselves have a lot to prove. I think Kyrie has a lot to prove after what happened in the finals last year. He didn't have a great series, and so I think he's out. To say, look, that's not the player I am. Think back to what was it, the 2015 finals where he hit that the shot against Steph. I think Luka's got a lot. In his mind, Luka's set out to prove that, hey, I am an MVP candidate. I should have won MVP last year. This is. I think every player on this team has something to prove, and you collectively put that together, and it's a dangerous combination.
Yeah, and I think the best thing about this team, obviously we haven't seen them healthy. It's just preseason, so we'll have a better analysis or understanding of this roster, over a course of a month or two at the beginning of the season. But at the same time, from what you like about this team is the accountability, because the players on this team don't shy away from truth, don't shy away from accountability, and don't shy away from responsibility. And that's the thing. When you have players and teammates that you can trust, where you can say things where it's not, an insult, but rather a critique, I think that's a special thing, where you have one goal in mind. Because I asked Jason Kidd in practice, I asked him, because the question before was asking about this new era where it's big threes. You try to have the best talent on each team. And I asked him, I was like, so outside of talent, what is the common denominator to having a successful team? Because he's been on great teams, championship caliber teams, not only with Mavericks but the Nets. And then he's coached great teams with the Lakers and now the Mavs the past few years. And he said it's being able to sacrifice and being able to be unselfish. And I think that's what you will have with this team, because, you have so many good guys, and you've been talking about it for weeks, how deep this team is. And,
Yep.
Everyone sees it. But, once you play, you have a lot of guys who believe they can start. So it does come to what he's saying is being able to sacrifice for one common goal.
And I think that's all the relationships that have been built within this organization, top down. I think having players, especially in today's era of the NBA, where it's a lot of me. I think the Mavericks have done just a phenomenal job, all the way up from Sint Marshall, all the way down to, the last person on the bench. I mean, everyone is accountable. Everyone holds each other responsible, like you said, for their play. When you have that kind of relationship, it makes it easy to say, hey, look, I'm going to help you with this, or hey, let's work on this, or let's do this, or hey, let's run this play this way. There's no egos. There's no, I've got to take this shot. I've got to beat, this guy. You don't see that.
I got to play for my contract.
Luka's not that kind of player. Kyrie is not that kind of player. Klay definitely is not, so when your best players are like that, when your CEO is like that, when your general manager, it bleeds across the organization, and sometimes it doesn't work, for most teams, because it depends on the kind of players you have and the examples that are set, for other players that are coming into the organization. And the Mavericks have done that, have set such a great example and set the bar so high that it's easy to kind of integrate other players. We saw it with Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington last year. Like, it's such a seamless fit because they know their role, they know what they're supposed to do, and everyone is willing to help. And like you said, to sacrifice and for the common goal of winning a championship.
Yeah, and Jason Kidd has said it. His job is to get players paid, and then he has a caveat to that is, but at the same time, if you're unselfish and you're winning, players will get paid.
Yep.
So you got to play. You can't play selfish in a contract year like Quentin Grimes, Jaden Hardy, Spencer Dinwiddie. These guys are free agents. But if you play for the team, in which I've seen nothing that would oppose that, everyone's going to be okay. No matter if it's in Dallas or somewhere else, you're going to get paid. So it's one common goal. But also, I have to mention PJ Washington in practice was doing 3-on-3s, so he's ramping up. Coach said we'll see how he is tomorrow in practice. We'll see how he is Sunday, and then they got they have a preseason game coming up on Monday. We'll see about that. Luka is obviously out. Jason Kidd already said that pregame, last game against the Jazz, and he was doing one-on-one shooting drills and ball handling drills with Shahnavaz in practice. I honestly don't think anything is wrong with him. I think he's ready to go. I mean, he was doing trick shots in practice, so
as always,
after his normal work, so I think he's ready to go. But you don't even want to see him play right now. It would be good to see him play in the last preseason game to have most of everybody. I don't know what's going on with Maxey. We haven't received any update on Maxey. He's probably I'm not going to speculate, but who knows with him. But on the last preseason game, it would be nice to see everyone else suit up and just have a test run to see how they're going to play against. Because that was one thing with the game against the Jazz. When you saw them, even Klay, like he had jitters. He struggled the first quarter. He even said it. He said, "I felt good when I checked back in the game. That's when I was okay." Because the jitters went away. I got a free throw and I made a shot, and then now then he went on a little run with his threes.
Yeah.
So when you look at this team, would you want to see Luka play in the last preseason game, or would you want to see him just ramp up in practice in 5-on-5s and then go into the Spurs ready to go from day one?
Yeah, normally I'm not a big advocate for playing in the preseason, especially your stars. Football obviously is a lot different, but
so are you LeBron? Why are we going over here to play a preseason game?
What was it? Why are we going to Milwaukee? Was that his complaint? Is that they had to go to Milwaukee to play?
Well, we have teams going over, going to Abu Dhabi every year.
Yeah, come on, just take your own private jet, LeBron. It's like I normally don't care for stars to play in the preseason. Just I want to avoid injury at all costs. But I think this would be a good tune up, especially before playing the Spurs, just to get a little run with Klay. Those three that are in the starting lineup, Luka, Kyrie, and Klay, and then we assume PJ and Derek Lively are going to fill out the starting lineup. But I think you want to get a little run with that starting five, right, before the Spurs. You don't want to kind of throw them into the fire. So it'd be nice to see. Will it happen? Who knows? But I would prefer to see him play maybe 10, 15 minutes in that last preseason game just to kind of get his legs under him before Wemby comes to town. And speaking of Maxey, and we talked earlier about seizing your opportunity. How about Omax last two preseason games?
Oh,
good
point.
You called out Omax and you said that was your guy that he's got to make a name for himself and prove that he's going to be on the roster as a first round pick. He's going to get rotation minutes, and he's been he's been playing really well too. In Maxi's absence, getting 30 minutes a night in the preseason. So it's great to see, him kind of taking advantage of that. Again, like you said, we don't know what's going on with Maxi. We don't know what that's going to look like. So, if Omax can take advantage of that, I mean, that's awesome. There's still a couple more games left. I'd love to kind of see, more out of him as we kind of get the season
Mhm.
started.
Yeah, because even he said it. He knows the situation that he's in. Jason Kidd said it. He has a couple of guys ahead of him, so it is what it is. That's what he's saying. When the team is healthy, he has a couple of guys ahead of him, so he has to be patient, like Hardy was. And you saw the beauty of being patient with Hardy, because if you just throw him in the fire, you're not really doing him justice. You have to be throwing him in the fire when he's ready to be thrown in. And I think that's what that's what you're seeing with Jaden Hardy. So I think you'll see that with Omax next year. I think he's building towards that, because let's be honest, you can only have Maxi be hurt every single year for so long. So
Yeah.
like next season, you have to, slowly transition to Maxi being the third, on the third team, like the White Pal was. Like you
Yep.
gotta have Omax either step up and be a small ball four and a big three, or you got to find a guy who can play a small ball five to replicate Maxi when the team has to go small. But I agree with you. Omax, he's shown that he's being aggressive. I asked him what has grown in his game since last year to take that next jump, and he said the understanding of the game, reading the game defensively, knowing where to be, trying not to foul but be physical at the same time depending on the game, and then also being proactive and not reactive on offense. How many times have we said that on this
Yep.
podcast? So he knows it, which is great. That's the first step of knowing it. And he's working it, which is great. That's the second step of working it. And now it's just all about taking advantage of the preseason minutes that he's given.
Yeah, and he's it's hard to get minutes on a contending championship team if you're a rookie.
That's
You
tough.
rarely see it. So he's
Yeah.
got to maximize every ounce of put every single minute that he plays. He's got to maximize what he's doing, and he knows what he needs to work on, which is great to see. Sometimes you don't want your players coming in and be like, well, I don't know, I just need to shoot better. He's pinpointing exactly what like you said, we've talked about it. He's pinpointing exactly what he needs to get better at, and he's working on it. He's doing it, and it's preseason, but he's playing really well. And Maxi, to your point, you don't want him to be the next big off the bench. Like, you drafted Omax for a reason. Omax can easily
Mm-hmm.
fill that role, and Maxi will be on the last year of his deal next year. That opens up expiring contract, and is there an
Mm-hmm.
ability to trade him? It's $11 million off your books. Like, there's a lot of different avenues that Dallas can go with, and obviously the injuries. Like, it feels like Max is always injured now, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate. You got to have somebody to step up, and if Omax can take that, that's just more depth for Dallas. It gets you younger, more athletic, more. I feel like it just adds another element to this team as well, if he can really capitalize on the minutes he's getting.
Yeah, and not only that, if Grimes has a good year, if Jaden has a good year, you need some cap flexibility. So,
Yeah,
you know, it, like you said, if Maxi's expiring contract next year or next off season, we'll see what happens there. But there's obviously a tie to the franchise. But sometimes you got to make sacrifices, because you're gonna need that money. If Grimes plays to his potential, and we're not saying, we're not saying be, we're not saying be a Tony Allen in his prime, but we're just saying playing his role,
yeah,
playing his role to his potential, then you're going to want to bring him back because he's young. And Jaden Hardy, we just talked about the good things he's doing. You're going to want to bring him back because he's young. So, you got to have cap flexibility, and the Mavericks are doing great at that the last couple of years. So they'll find
yeah,
every penny they can find under the couch.
yeah. And they look under that front office. I mean, just with Nico and underrated hire, I believe I have to double check this, but I think his name's Andrew Barry. He's a cap
The
genius. He's the guy.
capologist.
He's the one who put Brooklyn together when nobody thought they could get Harden, KD and Kyrie. He's the one who kind of worked the magic
Yeah.
financially for that team. So the Mavericks brought him in a couple of years ago, and I know I tweeted about it and said this is going to be a super underrated move because managing that cap is always tricky. So having a guy like that who understands the numbers and can kind of find wiggle room definitely helps.
And at the same time, they just got some new owners.
Yeah.
One of the top 3 richest families in sports.
Super wealthy. They
go
own
over the cap.
Oh yeah.
Bring all the players back.
There's going to be no, like, they don't care about luxury tax payments. That's just they pull that out of their pocket. They make so much money. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay, Shahnavaz. So we got 2 preseason games next week, and we got the regular season in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
It's going by fast. I'm just going to ask you a question in the Western Conference specifically. Outside of the Thunder, obviously the Mavericks, Thunder are getting a lot of praise. Some of them are not getting praise.
Mm-hmm.
But, who would you say is your biggest threat outside of the Thunder in the Western Conference to the Mavericks?
That's a hard question. I don't think it's Minnesota because I don't like the Julius Randle deal for them. I'm going to say Memphis. I think if Memphis is healthy, this is all barring health, right? I think if Memphis is healthy, they're a threat just because I think Ja and Jaren Jackson, especially on defense, are just great. I mean, they're both great players. Jaren Jackson Jr., obviously is a phenomenal defender, and I believe won Defensive Player of the Year a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. I've always liked his game out of Michigan State, and obviously Ja is Ja. If he can clean up, all the off the court stuff and stay healthy, they were the number 1 seed before Ja got hurt. So they're always a threat. I worry about how they're going to integrate Zach Edey, but that team has a lot of really good players. Marcus Smart is another lockdown defender that can give the Mavericks trouble. So yeah, I would probably say Memphis. Outside of Memphis, Oklahoma City, and Dallas, I don't know if there's another Western Conference team where I'm like worried about, if that makes sense. Like Denver's always going to be there because of Jokic, but their depth is completely decimated. The Lakers are just old, and they have a new coach seemingly every year. Phoenix, can Phoenix play defense? Can they stay healthy? Houston is still young, but they're a fun team to watch, and I think they're going to be good. Obviously, the Spurs, So, I mean, outside of Oklahoma City and Memphis, I really don't know who stands in the Mavericks' way to get back to the finals.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. Memphis is really... But I'm going to switch it up. First of all, I like Memphis. They're so deep. And then Ja coming back. They were deep last year.
And he's on a revenge tour too. He's on a...
That's why I'm saying him coming back.
Yeah.
And he's motivated. I mean, he tweeted something because he was the betting odds or maybe the GM survey had him like second in most improved. He's like, do y'all know who I am? First of all, I'm John Morant, and second of all, I already won most improved. I think Memphis is a good pick, but just to switch it up, just for the sake of it, I really think Denver. I would have said Minnesota as the biggest threat outside of OKC. Obviously, those two teams. But yeah, I agree with you with the trade. I think Cat was perfect for that team. They finally figured out how to play 2 bigs, and actually 3 bigs with Naz Reid. But I think that trade will impact them in a negative way, especially early. I think the first 2 months they're going to try to figure out. Like Klay is an easier transition.
Oh yeah.
Than Julius Randle, who needs the ball.
And see, that's the thing with Minnesota. You've got Cat. Doesn't need, Cat got the ball, but didn't, wasn't calling for it.
Yeah.
The shooter, Julius Randle needs the ball in the low post. He's not
he has
the
to
shooter.
Get going.
They've got to force feed him the ball. That's going to take away from Ant. Conley's old now. How much are they going to rely on Rob Dillingham, who I really like, but who they traded up to get? But
Dante was a good pickup.
Yeah,
especially as a Conley replacement.
He was, but they've got a lot of question marks. I mean, Minnesota's, and I know, Ant is a great player, but they've got a lot of questions. And then Gobert, we've all seen Gobert get exposed. I don't think he wants to run into Luka again after what happened last year.
And that's sad because I like Gobert. He's an incredible underrated, even though he's won so many defensive player of the years as a rim protector, as a defender.
Hmm.
But but when the playoffs come, it's a whole nother level.
He's
It exposes him,
unplayable.
like you said. He's unplayable. He's the old school, center that you want. But now you have to be diverse, and that's why Lively is trying to expand his game because he doesn't want to be in the Gobert skill set. Just defend the rim and do picks
Hmm.
all day. That's why, he wants to expand his game. He's a good passer. He wants to shoot. He wants to do low post. He wants to show that he is very diverse. He could be a Miles Turner guy or, a diet version, a great value version of Anthony Davis. If he, if he sets his goals high, he can reach all-star potential. So, but I'm not worried about Minnesota, even though I do think they'll be a top 5 seed. I think they'll
Yeah.
be maybe
No,
fifth, but or fourth. You never know. But I think the Nuggets will be third seed. I think even though they aren't as deep as they were, I think in the regular season, I think they will shine. I think Jamal Murray will have a great year. I think those Braum and Watson and Strotter, I think they will be serviceable. With Russell will give them energy, but I don't see them going far in the playoffs. But I think they'll be the biggest threat outside of OKC.
that's fair. Yeah, and you can never count out Jokic. I mean, it's just dude is just a
Yeah,
monster. He's a freak.
he's always a monster. Every year, it seems like he adds something or gets
At,
just
yeah.
2% better than he was already. All right, Shahnavaz, that's another episode of Mavs Fans for Life podcast. I want to say, make sure all y'all subscribe and follow us on social. You see our usernames. We're getting a lot of traction lately, so we appreciate y'all with the season just ahead of us here shortly. So hopefully next week we will be talking about maybe a test run with all the
Hmm.
players, hopefully available, so we can really see. Obviously, it's going to take a month or two to get adjusted, but with Klay's skill set, it'll be easier than other teams. So, yeah, hopefully we see a test run and see what the Mavericks do to get you excited for opening day. We appreciate y'all tuning in. Shahnavaz, last word. Anything on your mind with the Mavericks?
Oh, the Mavericks. Okay. No, man. I mean, look, preseason's the time to get players some run. See who's going to be vital part. Of the rotation. I want to just keep seeing Jaden Hardy and Omax shine in these moments. The losses or whatever. It's preseason. Who cares? But get them
Yeah,
valuable minutes. Let's keep showing us the improvements that you've made to your game.
I like it. Jaden Hardy, Omax, keep shining. And I just want to see the team get healthy. Just get healthy. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Goodbye.